For a quick preview of what's to come, we take this frame and start by installing the bottom bracket and cranks, followed by the derailleurs, chain, brakes, fork, headset, handlebars. We adjust the brakes and shifting, and finish things off with new grips. Today, I'm trying something new. I want to thank everyone for their engagement on this channel and highlight a comment of the week. Today's comment comes from JTech23. His comment reads, "Been watching for a while, but first time commenting. I really enjoy watching these old bikes get refurbed. Plus, you make a bit of dollars also. Win-win. I just found a Trek 830 on Facebook Marketplace for $75. Thinking about getting it, but already have too many bikes, lol." JTech, you can never have too many bikes, so pull the trigger and save that old Trek. Thanks for your engagement. Now, let's continue with the build. The frame has now been stripped of parts, cleaned up, and ready for its first component to be installed, the bottom bracket. This frame takes a 68mm bottom bracket. I only had 72mm ones in my parts bin, so I had to order a new one from Amazon. I greased the threads so it can easily be removed by the next mechanic. With the bottom bracket installed, we can move on to the cranks. To install the crank arms, just slide them over the square spindle and use the provided bolts with the bottom bracket. Make sure you tighten them down so they don't slip off. We repeat the process for the non-drive side and give them a whirl. With the crank arms in place, we can now install the front derailleur. It's important to make sure it's parallel to the chain rings and it sits a few millimeters above the big ring. Next, I'll install the 7-speed cassette. I'll start by applying a bit of grease to the free hub body, followed by the cassette. I tighten everything down, and that completes the cassette install. The rear derailleur installs with a 14mm bolt. Next, I install the rear wheel, followed by the chain. I do this to test that the limit screws are set correctly on the rear derailleur. It's now time to install the headset, fork, and handlebars. The bearings get a generous amount of grease. The fork slides into place and we adjust the headset. It's important not to get it too tight, but tight enough. The lock ring is installed. This holds things in place. This is followed by any spacers that are needed. Lastly, we install the handlebars with the stem attached. Let's install the rear brakes. I'll start by applying a light coat of grease to the brake bosses. That's followed by the cantilever brakes. The rear brake lever is installed with new cable and cable housings. I finished the job by connecting the new straddle cables from my parts bin and adjust things accordingly. With the rear brakes installed, we can now move on to the rear shifter. This 7-speed shifter gets installed with a new cable and new cable housings. With the cable routed correctly, it's time to connect the cable to the derailleur and adjust the shifting. With the front brake lever installed, we can now install the front shifter with new cable and cable housings. With the cable routed correctly, it's time to connect the cable to the derailleur and adjust the shifting. With the drivetrain complete, let's move on and install the front brakes. Just like the rear brakes, we give the brake bosses a light coating of grease. The front calipers are installed and screwed on tight. The right caliper needs some adjustment to get the tension correct. As I put the final touches on the bike, I wanted to share what my wife's thoughts are on how the bike turned out. She's not a huge fan of my collection of bikes, but I thought it'd be interesting to get her thoughts on the project. She said, "This bike looks like it rolled off the assembly line in the 80s, complete with a color scheme that is straight out of a Miami Vice episode." At least she recognized what era the bike's from. She continued, "That seat is probably more comfortable than a medieval torture device. This thing looks so slow, it probably takes longer to get to the mailbox than it does to write a letter." Well, with that, what do you think? Leave your comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button, and subscribe for more bicycle restoration content.